to the Whole Bitches. I am Rob Sprance.
I'm Chris Fortney.
Okay, so this is probably one of my coolest moments so far in hosting this show.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. I'm happy to be here
nothing
too.
to fucking do with you. Yeah, this is like
Only took 4 years.
Yeah, this is like I got fucking loaded and woke up and I said I had a wild dream that I was sitting in a room with two fucking metal legends and a guy from NHL.com.
And how did he get there?
And Fortney was there ruining everything for me. All right, I'm gonna go around. And first of all, I am a huge fan of this band. Let's put me back, 16-year-old me.
Wow.
In Lemoore, Brooklyn.
Wow.
Way overpacked.
Did you get your car stolen?
No, but I got my head kicked in. I got my head kicked in, and I've been meaning to talk to you about it for the longest time.
I'm sorry. The last punch was not good.
Frank Bello from Anthrax is here.
Yes.
This is an extra bonus because you came up to do the show with the other guests that I'm here, two other guests that are here with me. Brian Slagel from Metal Blade Records, the one who's probably most responsible for me being in Lemoore in the first place to get my head kicked in.
I'm sorry.
By the time we're done, everybody's going to get blamed for something.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
Brian has discovered or been involved with pretty much every single great metal band in one way or another. Most famous, I'm sure, from the Metallica discovery.
Yep.
Yeah. It's a good get. you did good with that one.
Get.
Right. And then, in addition to that, we have Shawn Roarke from NHL.com. And I'm a big hockey fan, as everybody knows. And we were trying to find out, because he writes from NHL.com, we were trying to find out. He runs NHL.com.
I wouldn't go that
Excuse
far,
me.
but...
Yeah. I think Gary Bettman runs NHL.com.
Well, yeah.
Shawn, what did you post today? You know, we were trying to guess what allegiance you have. What team is your favorite? You say you don't have one. I don't think none of us believe that.
No.
What do you think?
I know he. What we were talking about it earlier, but he won't admit it, but he's a Bruins fan.
No, I told you. They're
I know,
like my children. I have 30 children.
I know.
I love them all equally.
I know the NHL has deprogrammed you, and you're not allowed to root for anybody.
He has one jersey with like all the logos.
Yeah.
Hypothetically, if you were to like a team,
yes,
I think
I grew up a Bruins fan. Cam
Okay,
Neely,
all right, there you go.
Cam Neely, Terry O'Reilly, the Big Bad Bruins. When I was a kid, was the most amazing thing ever. I wanted to grow up to be those guys.
See, now the passion comes out.
I'm more interested, actually. Forget who he roots for. What about the team? Because you grew up in Boston, so you must have hated the Rangers, right? Or the Islanders, or pick any of these three.
I hated the teams. The two teams I hated. I didn't hate the Rangers that much because it wasn't a huge rivalry at that point.
So Montreal.
In Montreal. Oh God!
It's okay. I'm a Ranger fan, and I hate the Rangers most of the time. So I know your pain.
So to this day, you can't eat poutine.
No, God, I love. Look at me, I love poutine, man. Extra gravy, extra cheese curds. We're all over that. Wash it down with a good Canadian beer, and you're styling. And the other team I didn't like were the Flyers. So and they would have
that's a universal dislike, I think.
Yeah. When I was that way?
No,
you can't now, right?
Yeah, no. I mean, obviously, some of those things die hard deaths, but
it was the last team that you hated. That when the last one finally left, you're like, "There's my last hate."
Yeah,
there they go.
You know, and it's
like Scott Hartnell, and then it happens. It just happens overnight.
And and that's a huge part of it. Once you get to know the guys on the teams, good and bad, you know, you're like, oh, I hate the Flyers, and then you meet somebody like Scott Hartnell, who is actually a really nice guy, and I always enjoy talking to him. And you're like, well, I hope he does really good. And then you like a team, and you meet a guy, and you're like, oh, that guy. Yeah. He's not a good man. Yeah. I can't believe that I spent half my life thinking he was the most awesome thing. So and now my son's 9. And he's a huge hockey fan, and he's a Devil fan because we live in New Jersey. And it's fun to watch the whole thing again through his eyes.
That's very cool. And the reason why that you guys are here, Brian and Shawn specifically, is I had the pleasure of sitting in while you taped Metal Misconduct, which is it's a great twist because it's really a sports show with a bunch of metal guys, and I had to bite my tongue a little bit because Brian came up and he's like, oh yeah, we have one more guy coming, he's running late, is that cool? I'm like, oh really? He's like, yeah, it's Frank Bello from Anthrax. Like, it's okay, I don't care what time he shows up. I don't give a fuck what time he shows up.
That's because as a New Yorker, you'll understand this. Metro North makes their own rules. They use this police activity line a lot nowadays, and especially in New York, it's wonderful. And there's police activity. They they come on the speaker. I ran to the damn station to get from Westchester to here. Right? I run there. I'm sweating my ass off. 35 minutes, dude. 35 minutes delay. Are you kidding me? Really?
You know you're a New Yorker too when you don't have any sympathy for the sick passenger when the train gets stuck.
Get him off.
Exactly.
Get him off.
Get him the fuck off.
It's the hospital right now on the next stop. Get off.
Dude, there was one time I'm on the Long Island Railroad and the train literally in front of Winthrop Hospital stops and we're waiting there 90 minutes for a sick passenger, which I found out was just a fucking drunk asshole who was throwing up all over.
Usually it is.
But I'm like, the hospital's right there, just kick him out right in front. Like,
and plus, have you ever been on a 2:00 Metro North train? Bleh, it's throw up everywhere. And these idiots are everywhere throwing up.
Speaking of, brings me back to L'Amour's then. I was one of those idiots.
Yeah, me too. Believe me. But you walk out of L'Amour's and you got to get that's another thing. You got to get a taxi. You got to get a train because your car's stolen. That's what happens all the time. Every time Anthrax played L'Amour's in Brooklyn, all of our friends, at least 2 to 3 of our friends after our show, oh, dude, my radio got stolen. Sometimes the tires got stolen.
Yeah, all the time.
Yeah, the rims. It's crazy.
It was either that or you would go to L'Amour East and see guys with fringe jackets. So, so you really...
I don't even consider that L'Amour's. It was weird. It was weird over there.
I lived in Queens, so it was just easier for me.
Oh, yeah.
So, I was telling Brian beforehand that, I got to see Queensryche, right after Rage for Order at L'Amour's East. You were there?
I was there,
yep. So that was a fucking amazing moment, back in the day.
Packed, too. It was a packed show.
Yeah, and seeing you guys back then, it was right after, it wasn't, I'm trying to think of which album it was. It was Among the Living.
Among the Living, yeah. Because they, in those days, they had the Christmas shows and stuff. And let's face it, you know this, Brian. You're off tour and you're looking for money shows in December, and those were the money shows. You have Ferrendi Brothers. Hey, here's L'Amour's playing this weekend. Come early. Come at 10 o'clock. We'll put them on at 3.
That's exactly what would happen, dude.
Dude, we'd go on at 3 because hey, look, I want to milk the bar a little more.
Right.
That's exactly what happened, and we got it, dude.
And trying to find a cab after that was the worst because I stay in the city all the time. I go to L'Amour's and the shows end at 4:30. Then you hang out for a while, and at 5 in the morning, I'm way before cell phones. Trying to get a cab and always trying to get somebody there to call a cab. Once I waited for an hour.
Yeah, and you're covered in sweat and spit. No wonder why the cab drivers didn't pick you up. I wouldn't pick me up either, man.
Drunk and tired. Terrible.
It was rough. And so, Frank, the last album, Worship Music. Mm-hmm. Okay, I know you guys talked about it on the last one, and I don't want to rehash, but this is people listening to this new, and I urge them to all go listen to Metal Misconduct also, so you can get a double dose. Of what's
your
going on
podcast is way bigger, so we can rehash all of it.
Nah, that's cool. You'll get there. Okay, you have a huge metal label, so you kind of win, dude. Okay,
all right, friend.
Yeah, okay. I got a bunch of. Nobody's listening, writing me emails and sending me pictures of fucking uncircumcised dicks and complaining about it. We talked about circumcision once on the show, and some weirdo in Europe is like, it's butchery, and I keep getting these emails, and he's showing me these butchered dicks and stuff. I'm like, dude, I don't fucking want that from you.
Hey, to each his own. Wow.
From dicks back to worship.
From dicks back to the worship music.
Good segue.
Worship
Good
dicks.
segue.
That's about right.
Dude, the biggest compliment I could give you, and there's tons of them for it, but that woke up the 19-year-old in me.
Wow.
I was like, fucking wow.
Well, thanks, man.
There's been a run. A lot of bands have come back, and that's not to take away from what you guys have done over the whole career, but that album was just all of a sudden right back up there with the upper echelon Anthrax albums.
Thank you.
And the same thing was happening when Metallica came out with Death Magnetic, which just happens to also be a fucking great album. Armored Saint came out with one not that long ago, which was another great album. So it was great because all of these bands are coming out with these albums and they're all kicking ass, but yours was the one that I played constantly.
Thanks, man.
Joey's back
with a vengeance,
the top of his game.
Yeah.
And you did the Big 4 tour with Metallica and all those guys, and
it was a great push to put out the record on Yankee Stadium Day. And here in New York, we released the record, and we had this Anthrax Day here in New York. It was insane. And we had it in the Bronx. They give us this big big to do. We had politicians there. It was great. It was a wonderful day, and it was a great springboard to make all that happen. And 207 shows later on that tour, Anthrax hasn't toured 207 shows since the 80s.
That's fucking.
That's
crazy.
how you know where they keep coming at you. And Brian, you understand this, where they keep coming at you for more tours, and you're tired. You're tired. You don't want to do anymore, but it's important to set up your next record.
Yep.
And it is this game that we have to play. Look, we all have families at this point. We don't want to tour 207, but the truth of the matter is it's the only way to do it now.
Yeah.
It really is the only way to keep this alive and set up now. We're still talking about worship, going to the next record. Now, thankfully, we set ourselves up the right way. Because we did so much so much work on that, man.
And that's why it takes so long in between records. People always ask me why. Because in the 70s, I was reading all the Kiss biographies a few months ago, and they had like 2 records out a year.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
Every 6 months.
Yeah, but which is kind of crazy, because now it's like at least 2.5 years in between cycles, but there's so much touring that has to happen. That's why it takes
Plus
so
the
much
touring
longer.
actually feeds into the new album, too. Like, doesn't a lot of stuff happen kind of on tour? You work on stuff? Or
quite honestly, no.
Really?
hardly
me then.
It isn't even that. But
90% of bands cannot ride on the road. It's just impossible.
Really? No shit.
Yep.
you could have a riff idea, I think, somewhere, and you put it on tape, but God, you have to. It's weird. You go home, and that's the time. Like Anthrax, we get together. Scott, Charlie, and I, we get together. That's the only time. I can't imagine us going on the road, and because the road is it's a different animal now, man. It's. I think people think, hey, we rock, we party, and all that stuff, dude. I'm fighting to stay alive. You know what I mean?
Well, dude, you were mentioning you're almost 50. You look fucking great.
Well, thanks.
You have a full head of hair, and
Yeah, it's a nice wig, but no. My thing is, I have these Italian genes. Thank God for that, but it's not.
I'm
easy.
Italian. It didn't take didn't take with me, dude.
It used to be. You know what? The fire that we need to go on stage, I still need that. That's what I think drives us. I think all of us have that fire, and I couldn't imagine not doing it. So, going forward into the new record, that fire is very much alive, especially with the reaction that we got on the last record. I mean, just hearing you say that, and that was all around the world, which was really great to hear.
Yep.
I mean, Brian, you saw us on this 2 months straight in Europe.
Yep.
Anthrax hasn't done 2 months. Number one, I don't want to do 2 months anywhere. 2 months straight, because at this age, I just want to go home for a little while, a week to breathe.
Yeah.
Breathe and get my head together. I mean, think about it. Even if you're younger, man, I don't want to do 2 months anywhere. But it was necessary because of what we're doing now. It was.
But you can also feel. I think. For you guys going back out there and having this huge resurgence, it feels good too.
It does.
You're out
Totally.
there touring and people are really into it. And
Yes.
how horrible is it every day that you've got thousands of kids screaming at you, just going up like, man, that new record's awesome.
Look,
you have to get your ego down a little bit.
Absolutely.
That's why I say the record sucked. Horrible this night. I can't fit his head through the door now.
quite honestly,
wig, that's
it's
why.
the
Yeah,
wig.
exactly.
It's the wig. It's squeezing my head, but it feeds you. That's what feeds you, man. This feeds you to go on to the next. And thank God you have to put in the time. You really have to put in the time, because you can't see these kids anywhere else, right? You have to go and see them, and that's what it is to nurture it. It really is that.
Yeah, and you were mentioning what it's like now versus then, and this is a great question actually for all of you, because of the way media has changed since then. Between running NHL.com, which is all internet, all media, Metal Blade, obviously the record industry has completely changed. And being a musician, you see it from a different way.
Sure.
So it's kind of interesting from all different angles. I want to get your take on everything. Like a perfect example is, I know when worship music first came out, it was on Spotify,
Right.
and I was listening to it on Spotify, and then it got pulled from Spotify. And I don't know if that had anything to do with you guys and the way that the business works now.
Well, we like to sell records.
Yeah.
Well, I can kind of tell you a little bit about that, because we were a little bit late to the Spotify party. And look, the record business is completely changed, but in a lot of ways, I think it's changed for the better. I'll explain why.
Sure.
But with Spotify, much like what happened when iTunes first came out, the major labels all get all the money and all the big deals and everything. The majors are part owners of Spotify. So they're getting paid a certain rate. And then they go to the indies and say, okay, well, you guys should be on Spotify because everybody's giving us pressure to be on Spotify. But we're going to pay you 65% of what we're paying the major labels. I'm like, well, we're putting out the same quality of music. Why should we get paid? We should be getting paid the same amount. I mean, we're distributed by Sony, you know, their label, Anthrax label. It's like, why should we be different? So we all of us held out, and some stuff would go up and then we get taken down and people make a big deal out of it. But they finally, at the end of the day, made everything right with the independents and gave them the right amount of money.
That's awesome.
And for Spotify, you know, because we were also late to the party with that a little bit because I had friends who had other labels that were on Spotify early and it destroyed their catalog sales. Like all of a sudden their iTunes numbers went off the charts. So I was a little fearful of that because even when Metallica, they were pretty early on in Spotify thing because they got a little piece of Spotify. Which
shocked me because if anybody, I mean, everybody knows about the Napster stuff, but that's old news at this point. But I would think if anybody, like Metallica would have been one of the holdouts in the beginning, and they were
well. But the whole thing with Napster, I mean, look, Lars was right about what happened. But anyway, it was more about control of where their music goes to. So with Spotify, they came to them and say, hey, we want Metallica music on Spotify, and we will give you a little piece of Spotify if you'll put your music up. So they did. But when they did it, they did suffer some losses for a couple of months because it was really early. So fast forward to when we finally got on there, we and all the other metal labels went on about a year and a half ago, and we have not seen any decline in any of our iTunes or our physical sales other than normal. And it's a nice separate revenue stream now, all the digital stuff, not just Spotify, but all the digital platforms. So it's actually worked out pretty well in the end. But we had to wait because we had so much pressure, and like people are like getting mad, and people getting mad at me that stuff isn't on Spotify because we had some stuff in Europe and then we took it down and yada yada. But anyway, they finally got it all done. Now everything's up everywhere and everybody's happy.
This is why Brian Slagel should run the music business. Seriously, the guy's in the know. I mean,
the problem is the people that run the music businesses, this has always been the case, are the ones who are the least in the know. And this has always been the case. And I know you had a run-in with majors, with Warner for a while.
Well, yeah, we were there in the early 90s, and we were there right really at the end of the way the record business was great. Like Warner Brothers, Mo Austin, and Lenny Waronker were there. Great old school guys. Right. They signed Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, you know, all this amazing stuff.
Different era.
And then they got bought by Time Warner, and it became this huge corporate thing. And this is also when the whole Cop Killer thing happened with Ice-T. So that whole thing was a big thing, and we were part of Time Warner. So they decided that there's going to be a lawyer that's going to look through all the lyrics of any record that comes through the Time Warner system.
That's the whole Paris Music Resource Center was going on with Tipper Gore at the time, too, right?
This was post that. This was 92. So this is quite a while after that, actually. But so anyway, they have this lawyer, and the first record that we put out, we gave to them was a Guar album. And so they come back to me and they said, okay, this song...
You didn't send video with that, did you?
No. So they said, okay, this song's got to come off. This song you got to change the lyrics to. And I'm just like, there's no way that's happening. Right. So
are you in a position then where you could just go, fuck you, I'm not in this deal anymore?
What I did was I went to Mo and Lenny and I said, like, look, guys, if this is the way it's going to be now, I can't be here because I can't put out any of my records. Yeah. And they were unbelievably, phenomenally cool. They said, we don't like this any more than you do. We completely agree. We'll let you out of the deal.
But if you give us...
well, no, the Goo Goo Dolls. Yeah, the Goo Goo Dolls are the one band that we have that people are like, you guys had the Goo Goo Dolls?
Yeah, but what people don't know, though, is I was a fan of early Goo Goo Dolls. They are nothing like what they are.
I know.
They were fucking amazing live. They were very heavy.
Yep.
I have to say this, they're still amazing live. Johnny, still a great band. I mean, just because they do what they do now, I still think they're a great band. I just love what they do. Look, they were caught in this music business vibe, right? I mean,
well, it was an accident. So many things in the business are accidents.
Absolutely.
We put out because we've been, they've been on the label for years, and like you said, they were like they went for Cannibal Corpse a couple times in Buffalo when they're first coming in.
Amazing.
That usually shuts everybody up when they say Goo Goo Dolls.
And they tell that story constantly.
Of course, legitimizes them. But we put out a record that had a ballad on it that just was kind of an afterthought ballad, and all of a sudden, K-Rock, Kevin Weatherly in L.A., K-Rock, when radio was really big, played that song and went to #1. We were working a different track to radio at that point. We had to go back and do it. So they kind of became that ballady band, unfortunately. But,
they did. They did it.
But but we left Warner's and they stayed.
The funny thing about with Goo Goo Dolls is they did A Boy Named Goo, which I think was a good mix. Like that was kind of their prime for me. And they were playing CBGBs like at 3 o'clock in the morning. My friend and I went, and at the time they weren't getting huge just yet. So we were in the back, and at CBGBs you can just fucking walk into anywhere. And Johnny and Robbie are sitting there, and some other dude sitting there too. And I go, hey Johnny, how you doing? Hey Robbie, we talked to him, and they go, hey, this is Frank. I was like, hey Frank, how you doing? And we just kept talking to Johnny and Robbie. We walk out, and then they come on stage, and that guy's the drummer. And I felt so bad. I was like, oh shit. And 2 weeks later, the drummer was fired. So I was like, oh shit, we get the drummer fired. Get the drummer fired.
It's all your fault.
Yeah, exactly. But so you when you got out, you were lucky to be able to get out of that, because they could have really fucked you over big time.
Oh, totally. We would have been stuck there. I mean, who knows what would have happened. I mean, we couldn't have put out albums and all sorts of different problems. They were great. They let us go, and everything was cool. And then we ended up going back independent, and we've been quote unquote independent ever since. But I mean, most of our distribution is through Sony. But
right. So let's just go back on all you guys to where you are now from where you were. And I'm sure, Brian, you've told us a million times, same with Frank, but you're a younger guy, and you're not in Anthrax yet, and you don't have Metal Blade yet. Like, do you ever think that you can pull this off? Like, how do you get from you worked at Kerrang, I think,
Fuck
right?
No, yeah. I mean, look, Frankie will tell you the same thing. When all this stuff started happening in the early 80s, we were all just metal fans. And it was super underground. I mean, when I lived in L.A., I worked at a record store before I even did anything with Kerrang and some of that other stuff. And there were 3 people in Los Angeles that knew anything about the new wave of British heavy metal. That was myself, my friend John Carnarens, and this kid that had just moved over from Denmark named Lars. And we were the only 3. And so, you know, when all this stuff sort of started happening, like people started being in bands and all these different things, it was just trying to help the scene out there and just trying to make something happen. It was so small and so little. There's no way imaginable we could ever fathom to even a 100th of how huge this thing has gotten. It's insane. I remember we were Lars and I were at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction with them, and we're just sitting at 2:30 or something in the morning, just like, how the fuck did all this happen?
I know.
It's just it's so crazy. There's no way, and I don't think any of us set out to do anything other than be a fan or be in a band and play music that you loved.
Yeah, Frank. So Frank, you were obviously most people are in a bunch of other bands before they wind up in the band. Was
not me.
You were right. Anthrax was your first shot.
I was. I worked in a deli in the Bronx.
You, man.
Yeah, really.
Look. My thing is, look. I come from a broken home. I worked in a deli in the Bronx. I lived with my grandmother because my mother couldn't afford me anymore. I was related to Charlie Benanti, who got in Anthrax.
Incredible drummer.
Yeah, so I became a tech for Anthrax. Knew the songs. They were auditioning a bass player. Boom. It was easy. Transition.
Nice.
17 years old. Was in the band Anthrax, who was just a local band, really. And did no money. I remember the first tour we did, I got $5 a day for per diem.
Awesome.
And that was in the van tour with all of us, band and crew, all across America.
And that's before Joey, right?
Before Joey. And so I got in Anthrax. I got in the band the day the first record came out. I didn't play on the first record. I got in the band officially the first day it came out. So I toured that record, and then in 17. So I in high school in the Bronx, I doubled up my credits to graduate 6 months earlier, because I knew I was in the band. I got in the band, and the only way I could go on tour at 17, 18, I had to double up and graduate. So my principal let me double up. I was there till 4:35.
That was pretty cool.
It was the only. They let me go. They knew I was
went
passionate.
to Catholic school. That shit would have never happened.
No, they wouldn't. No, it wouldn't happen. No.
Hey, here's the cover with a fist coming through the mouth. Hey, you mind if I go join? I don't think the nuns would have went for that.
No, they probably wouldn't have went. But it was, and it, all through it. Yeah, it's been a ride.
By the way, you hear all those people out there now?
It's so
they
cool.
just found out that Frank is in the building.
Yeah, I
They're
tweeted
waiting
it out.
waiting
Dude,
outside.
I hate when they do that. Can't they
Actually,
stop?
I see
paparazzi.
I see some woman has a sign that says "I love you, Shawn Roarke," and she has a bra over it. That's all here for you, Shawn. That's all here
Must
for
be a
you.
hockey fan.
NHL.com.
Yeah, and you too, Shawn. Like, you grow up a huge hockey fan, and all of a sudden now you're running NHL.com. That's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, Yeah, it is awesome, and it's the same kind of thing. Like, you just never know what's going to happen. I went to college. I wanted to be a broadcaster. I wanted to do broadcast journalism. I went to Syracuse, and they got a hold of my Rhode Island accent. I grew up in Rhode Island, and,
love it.
And the guidance counselor said, you should probably think about doing something else with your life. You'll never do this.
Is it me, or is there even though he's not from, isn't there a tinge of Canadian in his accent? I hear a little bit of Canadian.
I think
in
it's
there.
mandatory for anybody working at NHL.com that they have that aspect to it.
Yeah, so tell me about how that happened.
Yeah, no, hey. But so I decided I wanted to write. I loved reading the paper, which never happens anymore. Nobody reads the paper. But I loved it as a kid every day. That was my breakfast accompaniment. And so I went and did regular journalism. I moved here at 21, right out of college.
Wow.
And I wrote obituaries. That was my
Wow.
entry. That was
Really?
my entry point into the newspaper business.
So you're well suited to write about the Islanders then.
Yes.
Boom!
I'm here all week. Try the veal.
Boom.
Sorry, Brian.
Yeah, no, that was basically your proving ground at that point. They don't do them anymore now. You pay for them and you get to write whatever you want. But when I started, we did like community news. We took all like the church fair and all that stuff. But the main thing we had to do was we had to do obituaries. And after you took them all from the funeral homes, you had to pick the most interesting person that had died that day, and you had to call somebody from their family, and you had to do what we called the lead obituary. Which
So wait,
was
how
like-
did you decide who the most interesting person was? That's got to be that's a fucked up gig.
It is, man, and it was hard. Like a lot of times, it was like who you thought you'd be able to talk to. Like when you looked at the survivors, and you were like, "Oh, I bet you this guy will talk to me," or they had a cool passion, like somebody like flew model airplanes or whatever. You're like, that'd be cool.
It's a pretty heavy metal gig, though.
Yeah.
When you think
That's
about it. Writing obituaries.
Pretty
Come on,
dark.
man.
Pretty
Just
dark.
writing about death.
Yeah.
But you never knew.
Liner notes.
And the whole point of that was that if you could do that, if you could call up somebody on the day that they brought their loved one to the funeral home, and you could get them to tell you a story, you could ask a town councilman a question,
Right.
Because they're not dead,
Right.
and they're not
Some
grieving.
aren't dead.
Most of them are.
and you could ask a hockey player a question. Like, it was the test. If you could
Right.
do that, then the editors believed that you could do other things. And then I
And
went
that's
on.
true, because that probably is the hardest to talk to somebody who's grieving.
It was
That's
incredibly
gotta be a
hard.
fucking bummer, man.
And
Yeah.
you know what? But it was the most gratifying thing, because almost every time you did it, you'd get a thank you note, whereas you never do when
Yeah.
you do anything else. Like, nobody ever writes me a letter and says, "Hey, you did a really good feature on Dan Boyle. I really learned a lot from that."
Well,
They
yeah.
call up and they're like, or they write and they're like, "Hey, that story you did on Dan Boyle, it's in my bird's cage." You know,
Or
I
you-
printed it out.
Yeah.
I printed it out and put it in the bird cage. It's not even the newspaper anymore.
Just so you know, just so you feel better, I don't have the bird anymore, so don't worry about it. He's gone.
He
Long
died.
Or
Or they
you-
do an obituary on
or
it.
you get the reaction that Daryl Sutter had to you as well.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
what happened with
What is
Daryl
that? What
Sutter?
is that? I want to hear.
The Sutters are all kind of
Sutter Brothers?
They're
Yeah,
Gravy little
baby,
dicks.
come on.
one of my not very good days at NHL.com when they were in the first cup, the Kings. They were playing the Devils, and they had rolled through the Devils. They had won 3 games in a row, and there was game 4 was there. They were ready to party. They were going to win, and it was going to be their cup, and they lost. They had a horrible game, and amazingly, it was the 4th straight series that they had lost the clinching game, game 4. They had won first 3 games in each series,
and then they would lose.
and then they lost game 4.
And actually, before you go any further, for those people who are listening who don't know hockey, Daryl Sutter gives the driest, most sarcastic, most like nasty press conferences you can possibly imagine.
And he looks like he's drunk.
Yes, he does. He's just like,
Is he drunk? Is he? I don't know.
No.
Oh, no?
No, but it's a very intimidating thing.
Sure.
I mean, very more accomplished journalists than I, walk in there like they're going through a minefield. And so somebody had said to me, hey, Daryl's coming straight down. They're going to fly. He's not in a good mood.
When is he ever in a fucking good mood?
Exactly.
We need to ask some questions, because the reporters aren't going to get here in time, because when a game ends, you have to file your story, and then you got to try and get in the elevator and get down.
Boy.
And it takes a long time sometimes, and if a coach comes right out, you miss him. But there's always a transcript, so you need some questions. So totally unprepared because I didn't think I was going to be asking any questions. I was down there to do something else, and they point to me, and all I could remember when they pointed to me was that had happened, that they had lost Game 4 of every series, and that's what I asked them. I go, Darryl, is there a reason? Is there something with the way that the makeup of this team that you lose Game 4? You can't finish a series when you have it there in front of you. He stared at me for about 20 seconds.
Wow.
Then he punched the table. And then he said, seriously? And then he said, these are the questions I'm going to get. And then he got up and he left.
Wow.
And then that was on like a Thursday, and then the next game was on Saturday, I think. And in Canada, they have a hockey night in Canada. And in the first period, Don Cherry, who's a very famous hockey personality,
flamboyant,
Coach's Corner, watched by every Canadian. It's literally like one of the things that's part of their birthright.
It's like Sunday Night Football.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah,
sure.
And everybody stops what they're doing, even if they're not watching the game. They got to watch Don Cherry. And he loves Darryl Sutter. Like, Darryl Sutter's one of his guys, a good Canadian boy. Yeah. So he took me to task, not by name, thank God.
No shit.
He played the clip, and he said, everybody gives my boy Darryl a hard time. What would you do if idiots like this asked you questions? And then he played.
I'd be honored if Don Cherry called me an idiot.
Yeah, and then he played the clip, and then my boss said to me, because I didn't see it, I was in the middle of working, tapped me on the shoulder. He said, hey, congratulations. I was like, for what? He's like, you're on Coach's Corner. You're a big star.
Did you ever get Tortorella'd?
I did not. I've seen some of Tortorella's best.
I know Larry Brooks. He tore Larry Brooks to shreds from the New York Post. Larry Brooks asked him a question, and he just said, he said, what did you get? Did you used to get beat up on the bus for kids? What's your fucking problem? Like, he was like, poor Larry. I felt terrible for him.
Or he asked you if you watched the game, or
right.
It's sometimes it's tough. I mean, there's a lot of. It's a serious business. Like, it's fun for all of us. It's our escape. I mean, those guys are living in a pressure cooker. I mean, it's their whole lives, and and it's such an insular society. Especially when the games get bigger, you get people that aren't part of that community that come in and ask questions that hockey people might not be like, oh, that's a good question. They're like, oh God.
Sure. Right after a game, though, you got to think about it. Coming out of the game, you're posing that question to him, and he's pissed.
And it was a bad question. Look, every once in a while, you ask a bad question.
Good for you.
I picked the worst time to do it.
Good for you. Good for you. Do it again. Do it again is what I say.
And sometimes
that's why we're talking about it.
And sometimes when you ask a bad question, you get a great answer.
Exactly.
Oh, we gotta crash the Anthrax press conference when the album comes out.
Oh yeah, do it.
We gotta ask
I love throwing curveballs, so I accept curveballs. I think it's great.
And the worst country for magazines that ask the worst questions to heavy metal people is.
Can we all guess it first before you give the answer?
Well, I mean, I know mine, but I mean, he may have a different one.
America.
Really? Wow.
Well, there are no magazines here.
Yeah, I was gonna say, there's not much left here.
They keep getting rid of everything. I miss the magazine. I do. Go ahead, bro.
I mean, look, it's a lot of trees that are getting killed, and you weighs your bag down. It's just so much easier to just get up on the internet and read all this stuff.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, let's get real for a second, though. I want to feel a record. I want to go back a little bit and make these kids understand why we got into the music, why we got into all that. We felt it. I opened Kiss Alive, and I looked at those pictures. I say, I don't care what this sounds like. I'm going to love it.
But it's happening. It's happening. Vinyl has made a huge comeback. It's making a huge comeback to young kids.
Thank God.
Who have grown up with little earbuds and little tiny computer speakers, and they put on a piece of vinyl and they play it through some speakers. It's like being at a concert. Yeah. And it's amazing.
And and I'll even go a little further than vinyl. And I remember this actually quite vividly. No, even though cassettes were the worst of the worst.
Cassettes are coming back, by the way.
But let me explain.
In a big way.
Let me explain. I had, and I still do, the Judge Dredd cassette.
Yeah.
And I think it had like Buddy Love Bomb and Saint
Buddy Love Bomb
and Saint Lounge Band and that cassette, when I opened it up, it had this grape smell to it that was so fucking awful.
Well, Madonna de Petroli, and we did. Really?
Yeah, dude, I'm telling you, because you know how sometimes like your senses kind of all click in with memory.
Yeah.
Like I can fucking still smell that cassette.
Maybe somebody spilled like a grape juice on the truck of
somebody in shipping.
or
maybe somebody in shipping.
Yeah, and I smelled it a bunch, and then I think it was right riding a dragon after that.
Wow.
Something like that.
Did you ever
He gave me Poison Ink, Frank.
Did you
Bello.
ever smell another cassette that had grape?
Metallica's Master of Puppets did.
That was grape as well.
Mhm.
Wow.
That had a grape smell too. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it had. You were on island at the time, right? So it couldn't have been the same label.
It's true. No,
so-
you were definitely on the island for a long time.
Yeah, so it couldn't have been that. But I love the sound of that.
What
song,
is
yeah.
that? Is there a game going
There's
on?
a big line for the Comedy Cellar all the time.
It's because people show up and do
Yeah.
unexpected
So
things.
somebody's doing a routine apparently before the show for the crowd outside. I guess.
Oh yeah, there's always some.
There's like
clown.
people with cameras and stuff. I mean,
It's the coolest. Like, like any night downstairs, like Chris Rock, Louis C.K., they'll just show up and go on stage. Jerry Seinfeld, and it happens all the time. So people come here just in the hopes that that's going to happen.
But I have to say, it annoys me that people are outside because in the New York that I know, with the Comedy Cellar being it forever, that was this. Let me tell you, I'll go back to it in a second. But this used to be a very empty place, a very quiet place, and people pass by it. This
Great place to buy records, though, down here.
Absolutely.
This is
So
one of the best places.
Now, what's the name of the restaurant here?
The Olive Garden.
Olive Garden.
I'm not sorry,
Olive Tree.
Olive Tree.
Olive Tree.
Sorry, no.
Garden.
Here's
That's
a-
also owned by Noam, who owns the Comedy Cellar.
Now, there's a very special reason why I'm saying this is because this is the first place, the Olive Tree, where I met Mr. Steve Harris from Iron Maiden.
No shit.
And I'm going to go into the story for
Fucking A.
1 second, if you don't mind, because it was very special. Steve Harris, we were stalking him as fans. He was mixing, Electric Lady, 8th Street.
Please tell me
Mixing.
he was wearing wristbands, even hanging out in the Olive Tree. Please tell
Actually,
me
had his
that.
bass on, too.
One leg up and eating.
Oh, yeah, and the striped spandex, too. He had,
Yeah,
he
right.
had the whole thing on. It was
blue and black
great.
stripe.
He eats dinner like that all the time. We were stalking him. So, long story short, he wasn't there, but we had found out that he was at the Olive Tree restaurant. So it was freezing, dude. It was sub-zero. It was ridiculous, right? It was freezing outside. So the four of us, me and my friends from the Bronx, we came down on the Manhattan Express on Madison Avenue, and we had our leather jackets on, nothing underneath, of course, was just a T-shirt. We wanted to be metal. We were standing outside with our MC leathers on, right? Freezing outside because we heard Steve Harris was in that restaurant eating dinner. So lo and behold, there's a big window here at that restaurant downstairs. Who do we see eating by himself? Mr. Steve Harris.
Motherfucking Harris.
Boom, right? So, of course, we're shivering like, you can't see this on radio, but we're shivering. It's a long story short. He sees us shivering. I swear to God, this is the first time we've met him. And he sees us like this. And this is how great this man is. He looks at us, and he waves us on. Come on in.
Nice.
Dude, chills. I still get chills when I think about this man because he's the best. He brings us in. And of course, we're still shivering, and now we're shivering because it's Steve Harris, right?
Right.
We're walking up to his table. This poor guy's eating. We're bothering him.
Yeah.
We go up to the. And we say, "Hi, Steve. We don't want to bother." We're shivering because it's cold, and we're nervous about meeting him. We don't want to bother you. He goes, "Sit down." He goes, "Sit down."
Oh man, that's
Steve
the
Harris.
best.
Long story short, he bought us all dinner.
I want to kill you right now. man.
Wow.
Exactly, dude. He bought us all dinner. Every Iron Maiden questions at that point was answered that night for 2 or 3 hours easily.
I'm sorry,
awesome,
our
dude.
friendship is now over. But Iron Maiden is my favorite band of all time. I met Steve Harris. I interviewed him once in 1981 for my fanzine, and since then I've never.
That's the first time you met. That's the only time you've met Harry.
Well,
Harry.
Oh no! I sound like an idiot when I say.
See that? Now he's dropping names.
I just had to drop that in.
I'm flipping him off, by the way. Now. I've met a billion rock stars and actors and athletes. None of this stuff bothers me.
Podcasters, major podcasters,
exactly.
major
Exactly.
podcasts.
I never get nervous ever for anything.
Yeah.
But Steve Harris, Maiden is the greatest band of all time. Wrote all the greatest songs of all time.
Absolutely.
He's the guy. I know Bruce really well. I'm really good friends with Rod Smallwood. I pretty much know everybody in that camp. But I just can't do it. And I was at a Toronto, this was like 4 or 5 years ago. They'd played Toronto. There's like an after party because they're doing that Flight 666 thing,
Right,
yeah, of
wrapping
course.
it up. So I was at the party talking to a bunch of people, and I saw him out of the corner of my eye talking to the guy from Sum 41. And he had that look, and we've all had that thing where you're talking to somebody and you don't want to talk to them and you want to get away, and you have that desperate look of somebody come, please help save me.
Oh, you really hate Sum 41.
So I'm just saying what I saw.
It's the SOS look. It's the
Yeah.
SOS look.
I look over and his eyes kind of meet a little bit, and I see the look. And, I've had a couple drinks at that point, so I was like, maybe I should go over there.
Yeah.
So, and it's kind of getting to the end of the night anyway. So I start walking towards the exit, and I kind of like at a corner of my eye looking, and he's just looking at me like with that look, and I just walked right past him and left. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it.
I don't. You know what? I get it.
Dude,
I couldn't do it.
I get it, dude. I get it. You know, because you don't want to, like you mentioned, you don't want to bother, the guy. But I'm sure, and when you mentioned freezing in the MC, there was one thing that you could wear with an MC to keep you warmer. Do you remember what everybody used to wear?
Oh, the jacket, the denim jacket on top of it?
The denim jacket on top,
right.
And the hoodie with the thermal on the inside, the gray hoodie sweatshirt.
I didn't get that.
And then the MC over it.
I like the way, I get that. But I remember that wasn't cool enough in those days. I really didn't have it.
Cool. I'm going to show you something.
You have pictures of it?
I've got it. No, not that. But I'm going to show you.
All that would do is prove how not cool it was if Rob pulled out that picture.
I've got something.
25 years later.
Okay, I am going to show you, and I do this to most of the guests just for their reaction. But I'm going to show you the kid that was at L'Amour's to see you.
Wow.
And I want you to take a look, and you'll understand what I meant by not cool. There he is, right there.
Wow. This is you, man?
That's me, dude.
Wow.
That is
Guys,
me.
look at that.
Oh, that's some good hair.
Hold you have some,
That looks like somebody familiar, though.
wow. It kind of looks like Howard Stern a
A little bit.
Yeah,
a little
maybe.
bit.
How old are you here?
I was probably about 17, 18.
Wow.
You look really thrilled to be having a photograph.
I
taken
probably was
there,
really
too.
high, to be honest.
Good
with you.
boy. Good boy.
So kind of went along with it.
But I love that you've carried it over the whole time. I mean, how old are you now?
44.
Good. And you're still into the whole thing. Obviously, it's still you have passion for it. That's what I think metal does to it. To us all. We still have that fire inside of us. As and I equate this to sports. We go back into sports. As much as the Islanders suck, I still have that fire to make them great. Right? I know they'll still suck, and you say maybe not this year, but
No, they'll be good.
That's going to be an eternal flame, bro.
I don't agree. I don't agree that they'll be good this year, but I want my friend Brian to feel good. But
It's all right. We'll see what happens in January. I could be wrong.
I would love to.
We should all fucking go to a game.
I'm in.
Before the Coliseum's done.
I'm in.
The Mausoleum. Let's
go to a game at the Mausoleum.
I'm in.
I'm in.
All right, you
Let
guys
me
in?
know.
Right. Oh, the only thing I'll say about that place is it is a horrible old dump, but the sightlines there are awesome.
That is
Sightlines
one of the
are really
greatest
great.
fucking places to
Agreed.
see a hockey
Yeah,
game.
totally.
And it doesn't hurt that I live like 5 minutes from there.
There you go.
So-
Do you really? Oh,
Yeah.
so-
And the music,
no
the
brainer.
music there used to be fantastic.
Yep.
Not anymore.
Not anymore, but back in when I first started covering the NHL in the late 90s,
It's not
mid
now.
90s, it was fantastic. It was metal. It was good, like
It's
80s.
so
like,
horrible now. The only metal thing they played all night long was Ozzy Osbourne, Crazy Train. That's it.
Wow.
It was awful.
Wow.
By the way,
Am I the only one who gets aggravated when you hear Crazy Train? Because it's like the one fucking Ozzy song from those 2 albums that you just don't want to hear. Like,
I don't know.
Like, it's just the most played out.
it was
of
funny
those.
though because Vincent Piazza, who's an actor who's on Boardwalk Empire and stuff, he was sitting right in front of us. Like the only 2 celebrities that you go to the Garden or you go to LA. There's celebrities everywhere. Like the island, they have 2 celebrities. One is Connolly, Kevin Connolly, who from Entourage.
Oh, yeah.
He's like I think he owns the team or something now. and Vincent Piazza. So he sat right in front of
And
us.
they used to have Hillary Duff too, but I think she used to date one of the Mike Comrie.
Mike
I think.
Comrie.
Yeah. So.
But anyway, he was sitting there, nice enough guy, super cool to everybody. And Ozzy Osbourne came on, and he was like jamming the air guitar. I was like, hey, maybe he's a metalhead actually. There,
You never know. It might be.
So I got to backtrack just for 1 second.
Go
I
ahead.
need to know this. Did you ever tell Steve later on when you became?
Steve knows. Steve has a
Oh, of
great
course.
memory. I have one more. Yes, and he
But
does know.
did you go back and say?
Oh
hey?
yeah, he laughs. He completely laughs but at least he knows how diehard I am.
Yeah, no,
And,
that's great.
From the early days, he knows I'm a true fan because anybody who wait outside in the freezing cold to meet, like Steve, is still one of my biggest influences as a bass player. And I tell him this. I think he's tired of hearing me, but quite honestly, the guy is the most genuine, generous person I've ever met. I mean, put it this way: 1987. What is that? London big show.
Hammersmith Odeon?
No, the Monsters of Rock.
Oh, not Reading Festival.
Not the Reading. I don't. Oh God.
It wasn't the one where
Nebworth.
It's not.
Right?
Yeah, it's not
Isle
download.
Man.
What was download used to be?
It's well, I'm
Reading?
gonna forget.
We'll think about it. I can't think about it. It doesn't matter. It's the biggest show in England. Long story
I know.
short, and
Not
Well,
Castle Donington.
No, Donington. Donington. There you go. Donington.
Boom!
Good, nice job. So Donington.
You're so metal.
Bon Jovi's headlining. Bon Jovi's headlining. A bunch of us bands are on. Metallica guys are there. Kiss guys are there, and all that stuff. Steve watches Anthrax, and he invites me, Joey, and Danny Spitz to his house. But we didn't know the fourth guy who was coming
Fuck you.
to his house.
They just dig it in deeper and just twist it around.
And then John Lennon came.
Well, wait, he's going to say the fourth now. I want to hear the fourth.
Well, you're going to laugh because I think you know him, but I didn't know him at the time, but he's a great dude. At the time, I didn't know until we got in Steve's car who was driving. Steve was driving, and the fourth guy who got in the car was hammered. You know, Chris Holmes?
Of course.
Who since he's sober now.
Oh, yeah, very
He's sober.
well, yeah.
But, dude, it was the most hilarious ride we've
Why
ever
was
had.
he in there?
Because he was Steve's friend.
Oh, no, I'm really pissed. Chris Hole.
We had a blast. He drove us back to the house. He had that big Eddie when we walked in. All of a sudden, we walked in. He had some kind of remote control, and he has this huge Eddie, whatever you want to call it, Eddie with the glowing eyes. I mean, huge in his driveway. And he has some kind of remote that it makes the eyes glow and stuff. It's like, as a maiden fan, like So he has the tap in the pool room. Dude, that night was just glorious. Everything about that night was great. It was just wonderful. No jealous. It was just a really good night, and I'll never forget that as a fan, because it doesn't matter how old you get, you're still a fan. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
of course,
absolutely. I was
absolutely.
in Steve's house. I thought I was sleeping in his guest room. I was like, I'm in Steve Harris's guest room. This is ridiculous. What am I? It's like
I'm taking a shit in Steve Harris's
yeah,
toilet.
this is the best shit I've ever taken in my life. It's in Steve Harris. His drain has my shit in it.
And
it was
you
one of
know
those
when he
things.
takes a leak, he puts one leg up for sure.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
He has to.
That's how he got his move. But it's all good. I get it.
But it is weird, like, I've become really good friends with Rod Smallwood. Like, if you would have told me when I was 18 listening to Iron Maiden that I'd even, meet him for 5 seconds.
Totally. I love Rod.
It is so bizarre. The whole thing is just so bizarre.
Yeah,
That sort
You
of
come
stuff.
around, I think because it has something to say about how passionate we are about this music, and I think these people see it. Like the guys in Kiss, Paul and Gene.
Oh, yeah.
They know. I mean, we used to do this. The guys in, my friends, Charlie Benanti, myself, we used to go down and meet Kiss a lot in the city because we're from New York, and they used to have a place. Their management, Bill Coyne, was on 59th Street. So we would wait till they have big shows like the Garden 3 nights in December. We would go downtown and wait for them in front of their management, no matter how cold it was in December.
Mm-hmm.
We would wait for them. Who else would be 6'3" and with long hair, with a suit on, with high heels, right? And you wait for these big guys because we didn't know what they looked like, and they go in.
Either Kiss or a tranny, one or the other. You're meeting somebody that night.
So eventually, either way, it was a good.
It's going to be a memory.
Either way, it was a good night out. But it was those times in my life I'll never forget because it was music was such a big part of my life. And as in sports, we talked about how I met Jeter. It's just a big thing. These influences carry on even to this day.
Yeah, and that's the feeling I have meeting you guys right now.
Wow.
It really is.
I appreciate
it. It really is. And I know you guys got about 5-10 minutes left.
We got
so
some time, yeah.
all right. So I can't let you leave here, Brian, without the Metallica story. And I know you've told it a million times, but I kind of want to hear it from you. And I can't.
It's always cool.
I can't let Frank leave without talking about the new Anthrax album that's coming out. But one thing at a time. And I want to find out who Shawn's team really is.
Yeah, we'll figure.
We'll get
all of that. So Metallica, how does that happen? I know you mentioned that a Danish kid comes to town.
So
he didn't go, let's make $1 million. Like there had to be a middle
you
ground.
wish, right? Well, what happened was, so in December 1981, I think it was. No, I'm sorry, December 1980. So the Michael Schenker Group is playing a show at the Country Club in Reseda, California. So my friend John Cornera and I are the only two people who know anything about the new wave of British heavy metal in LA. Nobody knows anything. We mentioned earlier.
Right.
So John's leaving the concert, and he sees this kid in the parking lot wearing a Saxon European tour shirt. Now, nobody knew who Saxon was in LA, let alone had a Saxon European
Great
t-shirt.
fucking band, too.
So he runs right up to me and goes, "Where did you get that shirt?" He said, "I just moved here from Denmark." He's like, "Oh my God." You start talking. He's like, "Oh, I get my friend Brian." So the next day, they come to my house, and we're just listening to all these different records and music and stuff, and we all became really good friends. We drive 3 hours to a record store trying to find, one single that was available there. We just became friends. In fact, I remember one time time we were at Lars's house, and he had a drum set sitting in the corner of his room, not put together, just there. He's like, I'm going to start a band. You're like, yeah, sure, right, Lars.
Everybody is.
Yeah, whatever. He's like 16-year-old. He was like 2 years younger than I was, and just had boundless energy.
Mm-hmm.
Like we'd park the car, and he'd be out of the car in the record store before I could even get the keys out of the thing. So one day, long story short, I started working at a record store. There kind of was a scene in LA of metal bands that, Motley Crue and Rat and all these people were playing around, and there was nobody paying any attention to it. Nobody cared. And I had seen some other bands when I was in high school that I really loved, just didn't do anything because nobody knew that they existed. So kind of being influenced by the new wave of British heavy metal, I thought, hey, maybe I'll put together an album just to showcase these bands so somebody could hear them. So I talked to the distributors that I bought stuff from at the store and said, hey, if I put together an album, would you guys sell it? And they said, sure. So I started getting every last penny I had. I had no money. I borrowed some money from my aunt and everything and kind of put this album together.
She must be fucking loaded right now.
No.
I want to see that contract.
Exactly. So I'm putting it together, and Lars calls me up and said, hey, if I put together a band, can I be on your album? I'm like, sure. And that ended up being Metallica.
No shit.
It's crazy.
So how did it sound at first? Like, was it good? Right? What was the song?
Well, it was Hit the Lights.
Okay,
it was
great
kind of
song.
funny because what happened is that James and Lars had jammed a couple times, but they couldn't really get anything together because there was nobody else around that liked what they were liking. So they just kind of stopped doing anything. So when the opportunity to be on the record came up, he called James and said, hey, we can be on a record. And really back then, being on a record was a major thing. Like it wasn't like something happened every day. Right. So the night before, typical Lars, the night before the deadline was like to have everything in. They recorded a demo on a little Fostex four-track thing. So it was James played guitars and bass, Lars played drums, and then Lloyd Grant, who was James's guitar teacher, played the lead, and that was Hit the Lights, the original version of Hit the Lights. So they brought it to the studio the next day, and I didn't even get a chance to listen to it until later, but I was pleasantly surprised. I mean, it didn't sound great because it was just on a Fostex, but I was like, well, this isn't really horrible. It's not too bad. And then about 3 or 4 months later, I got the No Life Till Leather demo, the real demo that they did after they'd gotten Mustaine and Ron Lagovny in there, and I was like, who is this band? Yeah. Where did this come from?
As great as Kill 'Em All was, and it was great, there was never the feeling I got listening to Ride the Lightning for the first fucking time.
Exactly.
That was really that's where I still think it's one of their best, and that really cemented what that and that Master of Puppets are the two. I mean, I know the Black Album gets the most attention.
No, Ride the Lightning is my favorite. And I don't really like the first album that much, quite honestly, because James' vocals weren't really very good on that record. The music was great, but the vocals weren't really all that good. But I'll tell you, this is how fickle the metal scene can be. So when and you'll remember this, Frankie. So when Ride the Lightning came out, all the original Metallica fans, not all of them, but a lot of them thought they'd sold out. The nickname in the underground metal world was Ride the Light Bulb.
No shit. Right.
Because they had acoustic guitars, they had Escape. It was crazy.
That's right.
I remember Johnny Z made us hear that record before it came out. And I remember I said, these guys are taking... all I thought was they're taking that next step. Yep. That's all you can think because you heard it. I mean, it was obvious to me. It's like, all right, I know where they came from. Wow, these guys are taking the step. You know what? They had balls to do that at that time because it was so. Oh my God, what do we do? What do we do next? Because it was an unforeseen thing right there. So it was just incredible. We all knew it though. You knew it when you heard that. That's the next step. Everybody's going, and it had to go that way.
And I bought tickets to see them at the Felt Forum on the Madison Square Garden.
Right.
I bought the tickets, and a month later, Cliff Burton died.
Oh.
And they rescheduled the show.
Right.
And it was the first show after Cliff Burton's death. And I got to see that show.
Wow.
And it was, I think...
Well, that's not true, but...
Why? What did they do before that?
Well, they did a couple of gigs in L.A.
You're killing my memory.
Yeah,
dude.
I'm sorry.
No.
Yeah, because when Jason was in the band, when Jason first got in the band, they did a couple of gigs in L.A., like kind of unannounced gigs in L.A. That was the first
tour.
That was the first real...
Of the run.
Yeah, that was the first real gig.
You have to make me
tour.
feel better, Frankie.
I'm trying to but I think you're right. I think it was the first show of the run.
Yeah, that was the first show of the run.
Warm-ups, like you're saying.
Yeah, because once they were in the band, They did a couple shows in L.A. just to kind of make sure that it wasn't
well
gonna
for
be
the
a complete
schmucks
disaster.
like us who
So
just
that was
have
the first
to buy
real
tickets.
show,
Right.
yeah.
Right. Okay, so that was like.
I'm sorry.
No, that's cool.
I've ruined everything.
Oh my god! Everything about metal is just
just
wrong.
wrong
It's just
now.
wrong
It's
now.
all a lie.
I
It's
should
all a
have
lie.
just downloaded it from Napster. No, so basically, like I'm at that show, and it was one of the most fucking intense shows that I've ever seen. Like it was from beginning to end. They just were fucking awesome, and I was like, because you worry like what's gonna happen to the band, and they were just fucking great.
Well, coming from that, I mean that whole time, I mean Anthrax was opening for them on that thing, and
Can you get on mic for Sorry.
yeah, my thing was Anthrax was opening for Metallica on when Cliff passed.
Oh, no shit.
On that horrible night, and
Wow.
it is.
I didn't know that. So you were there, like you were.
We were on the tour. I mean, you have to understand we're very tight. We're very close. I mean, that's what we did.
I didn't know you guys
We're
were
in
with
Europe,
them though.
sure.
Oh my God.
And Brian, you probably know this. You probably heard this story before. We after the shows, you go get something for the bus to eat. So you go to catering before you get on the bus and get something like a sandwich or something from catering, and you sit down, maybe have a cup of coffee and stuff. So Cliff and I had this thing. We'd sit down after the show and hang out and just talk and stuff and have a cup of coffee. And the last thing we said every night was, "Maybe I'll see you later," and maybe you will. That's the last thing Cliff ever said to me.
No shit.
That's so for me. My last memory of Cliff Burton was, "Hey, maybe." My line was, "Hey, maybe I see you later." He goes, "Yeah, maybe I will."
In a way, that's a fucking
and then it
beautiful
all
way.
goes-
That's a beautiful memory to have.
Well, maybe until you
kinda
get up
both
the
ways,
next.
I guess,
yeah,
yeah.
both ways. It's like bittersweet.
yeah,
it's bittersweet.
I hear you, but I don't want to change gears, but I do want to talk about Anthrax and the new
What's this
album.
Anthrax thing you think we keep talking about?
this
What is this?
this disease you had.
Kind of.
The new record you
Yeah.
were talking about on Metal Misconduct, which you should also check out on iTunes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah. You were very passionate talking about it, and I am fucking jazzed to hear it because.
You know, the reason why I'm passionate is because this is what I do. This is how I feed my family. This is a 30 plus years in, and I don't think I can do it because of the person I am if I didn't believe what we had. I think we have another chance to prove something here. After all these trials and tribulations, lawsuits, singer changes, all that stuff, I think we have it right. It showed on the last record, Worship Music. People got it. And we wrote the right record. Granted, thank God for it. And we're very humbled. Look, we know how lucky we are. We're very fortunate to be in this position, to be set up to have this next. There's a buzz again. We haven't had this, and we all know it. Again, you're talking about a blue-collar band here. We know how hard it is to get where we're at and where we are at now. So we are taking our time with these songs. We're digesting them and writing new songs and just sitting on them. And not because, you know what, we have no pressure. It'll come out when it comes out. But the thing is, it's getting to that point where you feel, when you feel it, it's the right way to go.
Yeah.
And we're starting to feel that now. So we can start talking about starting drum tracks. And that's a very exciting time because we're not letting anything out unless it's the right time. And the great thing about it is I think we're all agreeing that, all right, we're ready to go. It's that time. And it's very exciting to me because
Awesome.
it's that feeling we have when we know it's right. And we had it on Worship, and I think we have it now. We're getting together next Friday, and I'm telling you, there's a vibe. There's a hunger in this band that I haven't seen since the 80s. And we're very, very passionate about it, and there's a fire in the belly.
If you need a guy to badly tune your bass while you're working on songs, I'd be happy to just come.
No, I do that myself, so very badly. Very badly.
Look, it's an absolute honor to have you guys, everybody. I want to thank you for joining us, and you're welcome to come hang at any time.
This is
even
great,
if you
man.
want to bullshit and not about music, it's just about anything.
Yeah,
you're
great.
more than welcome to.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
We can say something, Brian, or.
I was just say, yeah, thank you.
No problem. Anytime you want to use the studio, you're more than welcome.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
Just let me know. So you can check out Frank. What was it on Twitter?
At the Frank Bello.
At the Frank Bello.
Who is at Frank Bello? Did you try to get the Twitter from him, or you want to be the Frank Bello?
No, I don't even know who I am, to tell you the truth. But I know everything else was taken. And again, Brian, you're a master at this. I'm just learning about all this stuff, like the whole vibe of how to get into social media, and that seems to work. But I'm trying to get new followers. I guess it's a very important thing in this day and age because it's the success of your band and all that stuff. So at the Frank Bello.
Well, we're gonna pimp it out big time for you.
Well, thank you very much.
No problem. And we're gonna find. I have some Italian uncles. We're gonna find the real other Frank Bello.
There's a lot of them.
We're gonna work it out.
My father.
They're just gonna talk to him.
My father. Let me tell you something. When he split, when I was 10 years old, I heard he had some other families. That's all I heard. So I think I have a lot of brothers going around. So
maybe your brother. And he named every one of them Frank Bello.
You want to hear? I'll tell you a quick story. Quick story. My father is all intelligent. You see him in therapy for this stuff. It's great. He had, I guess, he had another family that I didn't know about, and Anthrax was playing a show, and some guy, one of our crew guys came to back to me and says, "Your brother, I forgot the name, Vincent or whatever his name was. Your brother Vincent was here." I said, "Dude, I don't have a brother named Vincent." He goes, "Yes, you do."
You do now.
My father apparently had Vincent. There's all these people showing up somewhere. It's like, okay, this is good stuff. So
no shit.
Yeah, so I got a lot of family going around.
My mother had a similar situation. Her father left, had a whole other family, didn't find out until he died. She got them all together, had a reunion at the house.
Real, that's beautiful.
Loved it, right? And then 2 weeks later, one of her half sisters was on America's Most Wanted.
What?
So that's how beautiful that was.
Wow. Who has the worst Italian family here? It's like, you guys, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Well,
you might have one up.
I tell you though,
yeah, that was one up me.
My wife's Sicilian and from Sicily, and they are about as Italian as it gets.
Yeah, I'm half Sicilian, so I got that side too. Which I know that. I know what you're saying.
Yeah, it's
Good
quite
times.
crazy.
Yeah.
They all love, but they love very loud.
It's a serious passion right there.
That's why Anthrax is so big again. I get it now.
It's Sicilian. The whole record's gonna be in Italian.
It is half Sicilian.
Brian, what's next for Metal Blade? What you got coming up?
Oh gosh, we got a ton of stuff coming up. We're doing a Best of King Diamond, a double disc.
Nice. He's back out touring right now.
Yeah, he's out touring as we speak with this massive, monstrous, insane.
You know
show.
what? I
It's
saw some
crazy.
YouTube videos. He fucking
It's
still
insane.
sounds.
I saw
good.
your tweets.
He sounds great,
I saw
yeah.
your tweets. It looked amazing.
He sounds better than ever. Really having a heart attack was probably the best thing ever for him. Like
Wow.
he sounds 15, 20 years. The doctor said you're going to sound 15, 20 years younger. So we're doing a best
Wow.
of.
That's why I eat like shit, because I want to
Exactly.
come back strong.
Well, even the doctor said everybody kind of needs a little thing there. But yeah, double best of all the Roadrunner stuff and the Metal Blade stuff. He put it all together. They remastered it and re-engineered it. That's coming out in November.
Fucking A.
And then we have a bunch of stuff coming out next year. Insiferum, Black Dahlia Murder, Monomarth, on and on and on. All that
Awesome.
stuff. Go to metalblade.com. You'll see all of it there.
And I have a message from a friend of mine, Kevin Kraft. From Mad Scientist Party. He says, please ask Brian why he does every podcast but mine.
Well, tell him I'll do his podcast anytime. He has to schedule it with me because
There you go.
we kept talking about it and then I couldn't do it. And I think because I was out of town a couple times, he just gave up. But I'll do his podcast anytime. He's a great dude.
All right, cool. And Shawn, once again, you can find Shawn Roarke at NHL.com. As a huge hockey fan, I am now going to religiously read your articles, and
Me too.
You're non-biased, and then I'll comment about how you're being too hard on the Rangers, and I can be harder on the Rangers than you are.
Awesome,
We
man.
should all go to the Coliseum and check out a game before it's done.
Hey,
That'll be
I'm in.
awesome. I mean,
I'm in.
there's a lot of great memories there. I mean, people make fun of that building. They have since I moved here 20 years ago. But when you think about it, when that building goes away, it's going to be sad because
Yes.
there were great things that happened.
Oh,
there.
yeah.
Islander Ranger games there was the greatest because you first of all, it's so tight when you say you just knew that a fight's gonna happen at any fucking moment, and it always does
In the crowd
Yeah,
more than on the ice.
Right, and that's what I
Not-
mean.
not
Yeah.
in the game, well,
in the
for sure.
crowd,
The crowd
some
was
guy
dangerous.
getting peanuts shoved down his throat.
I mean, those are brutal fights too.
I wasn't here for the 4 Cups. I hadn't moved here yet.
You talking about our dynasty?
Yes. I moved here much later. So for me, the greatest thing that ever happened at the Coliseum, and the thing I'll be most sad about when it goes away, is that was the first place I ever saw Pantera,
Oh, no shit.
and it was
nice.
on their first big tour.
Amazing.
And they came on, and the way they sold the show then was you paid extra to go on the floor, you got the little wristband,
Right.
and then everything else was you set up. You got your seat, but you couldn't get downstairs.
Yeah.
Like that was how they did it.
That's a great memory, man.
And they
Wow.
came on stage and they just said, "Screw this! Come down, let's have a party!" And everybody just jumped
Awesome.
onto the
Major
floor.
fire
They
hazard.
started throwing the chairs, and they made this huge mosh pit. And the ambulance pulled right into like the the door there, and they just started carting people. I mean, it was crazy. So I found it the other day on YouTube.
Yeah.
If you look hard enough, you can see that old Nassau Coliseum show.
Wow.
And it was.
That's awesome. Hopefully that wasn't in the days where they used to throw M80s at all the shows. Remember that?
Oh yeah, I remember.
I was
all
at a
those.
show where they threw an M80 at fucking Dio's Dragon, and it fucking broke the dragon, and Dio got fucking pissed.
Oh yeah.
He's like, who did that? You know, he's like, fucking like,
Gave him the Italian horse.
Were you at Maiden at the Palladium?
no, never saw that one.
Oh,
no.
wow.
No.
Bruce just stopped the show. Some idiot threw an M80 and it blew up right in the guy's face, one of the crew guys' face, right in his face.
Fucking
hospital.
stupid.
They stopped the whole show. It was horrible, man.
Yeah, that I never understood that. Like that would be the one thing because they were flying from the upper levels. They were lighting M80s and just throwing them off. There was a Priest concert at Nassau Coliseum actually when they went to turbo thing with all the colors and everything.
Yeah.
People were throwing M80s from the upper decks.
Well, they might have been justified for that.
Got a good point. And then later on you find out Rob Halford was gay, and I was like, how did I not see that? Like back then you didn't like kind of.
It does kind of change the meaning of a lot of those songs.
Right, it certainly does. But I was like, yes, he is gay. But it's all good.
Yeah.
So he still sounded fucking good.
Well, that's a funny thing. Everybody thinks metalheads are like, really racist and really closed-minded and everything. Like, Halford came out of gay. It was like, yeah, who cares? We don't care.
Who cares?
Chris is incredibly racist.
And incredibly gay. So.
There you go. Perfect. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Brian. Thank you for ruining my Metallica memory for the rest of my life. Frankie, thank you for all the great memories, and I can't wait to make some more. So thank you for listening to The Hole. I am Rod Sprant.
Courtney Love.
Frank Bello.
Ryan Slagel.
Shawn Roarke.
Later, motherfuckers.